Hi fam, how are you? Happy November. Months are going by so fast, but also so slow. It's crazy. But yeah, anyway, cheers to not too much of 2020 remaining. Anyway, Um, it is November. November is a month where a lot of people try to do this thing called non-fiction November, which is a month where apparently people read a lot of non-fiction. And I tried to do this as well. But I thought I would come in now and do six recommendations. Three of these are going to be books that I have not read but heard amazing things about, and I hope to maybe read this November. Maybe, let's see. And then the other three are books that I absolutely love and would recommend wholeheartedly that you read. So let's get into it. Let's start with the books that I've actually read. And if there was a book that you would leave this video with and be like, okay, I'm going to read that book, please, please, for God's sake, let that be Naomi Klein's Shock Doctrine. I can actually say that this book changed my life. It changed the way I viewed things. It changed the way I looked at the world, at governments, at economics. And Naomi Klein is just such a brilliant writer. Oh my God, it was so good on like so many different experiences and levels and just like all of that. But let me tell you what this book is about. So, what Naomi Klein essentially does is that she talks about the shock doctrine, which is, I'm forgetting what the main guy's name is, but there's basically this economist who's also a professor in a really famous school in, I mean, like college in the US. And essentially, he's made this thing called the shock doctrine, which is essentially wherein, hi, this is editing Smriti, because I felt like the portion in which I was trying to explain what the shock doctrine is was not making any sense. So, hi. I am going to also try to make a little bit of sense. But essentially, the shock doctrine is something that came up in the late 1960s, 1970s in the Chicago College of Economics, which was heralded by Milton Friedman, who is a very popular American economist. But essentially, what the shock doctrine does is that when a man-made disaster or a natural disaster takes place, and when people are literally going through shock and are trying to take care of their more basic needs, that is when you kind of swoop in and make controversial or any sort of changes in government that usually people would have opposed, but because people are busy doing other things like literally taking care of like survival, they don't really pay attention to what the government is doing behind the scenes. And that is what it is. It's also called disaster capitalism. And also the book talks about how people have now liked disaster capitalism so much that they actually have gone and brought about wars, such as people have said that the Iraq war, in this book in particular, was actually made for disaster capitalism, and stuff like that. For that's what we've been discussing for so long, right? Like, oh, it was all about the oil, and maybe it was, but yeah, that's basically what the shock doctrine is and what it does. Explained very simply. Hopefully that made sense. All right, back to Smriti of the past. But yeah, that's essentially what has been happening over the 70s, over the 80s, 90s, and even now. As you see, one of the main examples that they give in the introduction was of Hurricane Katrina, and when basically the floods happened, and they basically changed the entire public school system to charter schools. So there were no public schools, there were only charter schools. Charter schools are essentially like semi-private, not quite so expensive, but still like you have to pay a certain amount of money to go to those schools. And yeah, they just kind of privatized education while people were worrying about their houses being flooded, not having those basic needs. So stuff like that. What happened in Sri Lanka when the tsunami took place, and I just think that this book really opens your eyes and made me question so much of shit. You're seeing the world for what it actually is, and that's amazing. And I have spoken about this book a lot now, but I've also not spoken about it on my channel, which is a shame because it's so good, and I really hope that someone picks this up, please. The next book that I want to recommend to you is Not That Bad, which is Dispatches in Rape Culture, which was edited by Roxane Gay. So what Roxane Gay has done is taken a lot of people's essays of them dealing with rape culture. These could be women who have dealt with rape themselves, who have been caretakers of people who have been raped, partners who have generally been sexually assaulted, or like even there was this one story about like a man who like exposes himself to her in um in a safe place, and that um really spoke to me because that shit's happened so many times with women, with men, whatever. And yeah, it's a really well edited book, well written book. And I listened to the audiobook as well as the actual book. I read the actual book, and the audiobook actually is narrated by each one of the contributors. So each person who's written the essay actually narrates the book, which I thought was really fascinating and really well done. And I just think that this book needs to be read, and yeah. The third book that I have read and I absolutely love, and would this be my channel if I did not mention Know My Name by Chanel Miller. This is a Chanel Miller fan page essentially, because that woman is amazing. Chanel Miller wrote this book. She was Emily Doe in the Brock Turner case, and the Brock Turner case was essentially this case that happened where a 19-year-old boy or man sexually assaulted Emily Doe or Chanel Miller in Stanford. It was just in the media a lot, and essentially why it was in the media was because Brock Turner was called the Stanford swimmer, because he was from Stanford and he was part of the swim team, and oh my god, he could win maybe the US some gold medals and stuff like that, but he also raped someone. So why weren't people talking about that? And then the judge, during the whole process, then the judge gave he was found guilty. Brock Turner was found guilty, and the judge gave Brock Turner 6 months because he was like, oh, he's such a nice boy in terms of like he has so much of potential, and hence I don't want to ruin his life, which is like no one understood. But then Chanel Miller, who was then known only as Emily Doe because her name was kind of like hidden from the public, she wrote this victim statement, which was then published on BuzzFeed, and it is one of the most moving things I have ever read in my entire life. And it's just so good. I'm tearing up just thinking about it. So yeah, this book is just so good. I wanted to highlight 99.9% of this book, and because she just writes so well, and I have this book on Kindle, which is where I originally read the book, but I also listened to the audio, and I would recommend that experience as well, listening to the book as well as reading the book, because so good. Yes, it is a really heavy book, but honestly, just so good in terms of the way she's written it. Beautiful writing, and cannot recommend anymore. Clearly, brain not working. Need a sip of beer. The next next three are books that I have not read but really want to read. And I will start off by Republic of Caste by Anand Teltumbe. And Professor Anand Teltumbe is, if that name sounds familiar, is the person who is now in jail for God knows what reason. The government has, I don't even know. I'm gonna link all of that information down below. He's been jailed for some really stupid shit which I don't even think is true. And it's just basically the government trying to squash dissent, because that's what the current government is doing. But Anand Teltumbe is Dalit, and he is in fact somehow related to the Ambedkar family. And the Ambedkar, like Baba Sahib Ambedkar, is one of the key supporters of the Dalit movement or the Bahujan movement, which is essentially because of the caste system. He basically is trying to give, what is the word? Empower Bahujans or Dalits, and bring them to an equal playing field as the upper caste people. But what this book does is it basically tells you about the caste system from the very beginning in terms of post independence. So, like, from he identifies the watershed moments across the journey, from the adoption of the flawed constitution to the Green Revolution, the OBC upsurge, rise of regional parties, up to the nexus of neoliberalism and Hindutva in the present day. As politics of symbolism exploits the fissile nature of caste to devitalize India's poorest, Teltumbe's damning analysis shows progressive politics a way out of the present impasse. So, this book clearly is going to be a great read in terms of not only understanding what's happening with caste in the modern day, but also how we can make it better. And that is something that I really want to read. And if you want to read as well, do read along with me, I guess. Buy this book. Also, please dissent, tell people about what's happening with Anand Tumbe, educate yourself as well. And yeah, that's about it. Well, after such a heavy situation that I went with the past uh, four books, actually, yeah, I think that we need some therapy. So, and that's why I wanted to read this book, which is Maybe You Should Talk to Someone by Laurie Gottlieb. Now, Laurie Gottlieb is a therapist, and she talks about her therapist and her life in therapy and as a therapist. So that's just a lot of therapy going on, which honestly, like, the world needs right now. So yeah, that's what this book is about. I really want to read it because I have heard some amazing things about it, in terms of not only the way that it's written, but also in the sort of insights that come from it. And as a person who deals with a lot of mental health shit, and generally as a person who is currently living in 2020, this would probably be a good time to get some insights. So, want to read this book? Should probably read this book soon. And then the last book, because of course there is no such thing as happiness in my life, apparently. I want to read Dancing at the Pity Party, a dead mom graphic novel. This is a graphic novel about Tyler Fedor and her journey dealing with the grief that she went through after she lost her mum. And this, I know, is going to just bring waterfalls just soaring from my eyes. But I really want to read this book. I look for books that make me connect with the other person's experience, and I think that this is going to do it. And I've just read like the first few pages. I also really like the way that it is written. Why are you not like freaking, yeah, there you go. I just like, yeah, so it's really simple in terms of the drawing. But yeah, I read a few pages and it just seemed right up my alley. So I need to read this essentially, and be sad but also be happy but also be sad. You know what I mean? Okay. So these are my 6 recommendations for books that I think that you should definitely read. If not in this November, that at some point of time, if you have already read this book, any of these books, then do comment down below and let me know what you thought. If you do plan to read these books, let me know. If there are other books that you would like to recommend in the nonfiction genre, just generally let me know as well. Just comment down below and just talk. Let's talk about books. That's essentially what I want to do. Okay. So yeah, hope you have a good November and talk to you soon. Bye.